Recording is on.
All right, today is December 27th, 2020, 2 days after Christmas, and today we're going to continue our discussion on the Desiderata Extinctionati, and we're going off of last week's discussion, any responses to the tips and techniques for personal development. So if you have any comments or anything you want to share, the first thing I just want to share is, it was difficult for me, especially it takes seems like some will and mental effort. I feel like before I was just, and a lot of people I feel might feel this way, that just going through life, going through the motions. Once I was able to, stay aware, be in the moment, and actually using those other techniques kind of in conjunction. So meditation, the detachment, nati, kind of using those together kind of helped me out too. So I didn't feel like if I failed at one, I fail at everything. Just had to keep going with the process. So yeah. But it's difficult. It's not an easy task for sure. So that's
what happened when you tried? What happened?
So whenever I wanted to, or whenever I felt that I wanted to detach from something, I didn't want to let go. I guess if for some things, the emotions, I was, I've had a lot of reflection on my emotions, so I was able to kind of, that was a little bit easier. But relationships was something that I found a little difficult for me, and things like, and I think there's some parts of civilization that still, I admit it, there's a tie, like there's something that's holding on to me. I think when that the Nashville happened, I realized, oh well, what if there's no more internet? And it got me thinking, certain things, the luxuries of that's it's something I still have to work on, or just have to be aware of.
Did you borrow down to try and figure out what exactly it is? What do you get out of the internet or anything? And just say, try and analyze exactly what it is. Like, you put yourself on the therapist's couch and try and figure it out, and say, why are you attached? It's like if you look at a cat, it's like it is not attached anyway. So it's like if you died tomorrow, it would happily just go somewhere else.
Right.
So what is the difference?
I'm trying.
Where does attachment come from?
Yeah, that I've never. I don't think I've ever explored that. I've always, mentally or intellectually, it's like, it's, there's that aspect that it's not good for us, but then at the same time, it's benefiting us somehow. There's that part of me, I think, that still holds on to the benefit, even though it's not good. I don't know how to explain it sometimes.
It's the civilization trap, isn't it?
Yeah, the trap is. Yeah.
So you don't have to give it up. You don't have to get rid of it. You just have to detach from it. And the way to do that is to just analyze exactly why you are attached to something. So part of the exercise is about habit. So if you attach to something out of habit, that's not good for you or anybody else, right? I mean, if it's an actual person, you do a lot more of a favor that you don't take the person for granted. And every time you see them for the first time, and every time they go out of the room, you assume they may never come back in again. And basically it would it means that you really are seeing the person. If you're attached to a person or a thing, it probably means that you're not really attached to the thing that's in front of you in the present moment. You're actually attached to an idea of it. It's kind of like the Coca-Cola syndrome. This is a good exercise to try, especially with Coke. Is Coca-Cola is an idea, and it's a cultural icon. So nobody really tastes Coke. People drink it, basically the civilized world drinks endless supply of it. But the next time you have a Coke, if you actually taste it, you really taste it on your tongue, taste every it's actually vile. It's actually a horrible drink. But we don't notice because we have an association. We're not tasting our taste buds. We're not connected to our taste buds. We attach to this symbol. So it's basically there's this empty symbol that we're attached to, and the Coca-Cola through advertising has given us a whole lot of connections, and so we have this this dream of what Coke is. So it's the same with everything you're attached to. It's like you're really attached to the idea. But if the same even applies to addictive things like cigarettes. Next time you have a cigarette, is really, really taste it. Every light, as if it was the first time. When you first taste a cigarette, it tastes quite different. When you get into it, you're really just connecting with the habit. You're not really connecting with the cigarette you're smoking. And it applies to everything. It's amazing how when you actually attend to something, everything you taste, hear, see, it's amazing if you actually attend to it as if it was for the first time, how it kind of cuts through all of that. And so it's hugely valuable to find the idea that you're operating from. Because we have this ensemble of ideas, and they only go so far. And so part of this, if you're a doomer like me, then you say, well, they're going away. So it's useful from 2 points of view. One of them is, if it's going away, it's better to appreciate it now and not be blindsided by it. And the other thing is, it's better you enjoy it more if you actually are connected to the thing in front of you and not to the idea of it. So it makes a big difference to go and burrow through. And if you can find a habit or something, well, a good idea is to say, when did you first? You see, normally you come to, even with you smoking a cigarette or drinking Coke, at some stage when you're, often when you're a baby with Coke, is you come to this and say, oh, this is really cool or nice or something. And then that fixes an idea. And then that becomes the point of reference that anchors every other experience of that thing. So you never taste it again. You're just familiar with this archetype in your head. And so if you can trace your way back to the very first time you formed that archetype, it can be very liberating. Right? There's even things that you just grew into. There's always some definite time where it actually just slipped in there. Even relationships with people or cats and dogs and stuff. There's always a little moment where it just kind of then melted into kind of habit and stopped being, perception. So they stopped being in the present moment and drifted off into the ether of association. So now the whole world develops and carries on, and there's change all the time. But these are what psychologists call idées fixées. The French, there's fixed ideas. So strangely, if you have this model of something, it stays fixed. But the world moves on, and eventually the partner you're with is completely different to the model that you had in your head. And at some stage, you can't maintain the disconnect. It's basically, there's a disconnect where you're saying, like, you're not the person I met. And what they're saying is, you're not the person I have in my head. Stand still, you bastard. It's like, no, people change every day. So you should meet them every day as a new person. And the same, even down to the internet, or if you drive a car, or whatever you do, meet it every day. The other thing is it's not going to be around for long. So one of the things about an idea fixe is you assume it's fixed forever. So you're going through the motions of this conceit that everything's going to last forever. This is the essence of our problem, and why we're probably going to go extinct. It's a normalcy bias. It just becomes normalized, and you think it's going to be there forever. It's like, it's very valuable in terms of appreciating what we have left, right? And just appreciating its effervescence. So it's wonderful to think of something like, science, like, even people that are doomer. I know I got a friend here who's a doomer. No, not a doomer, but really knows sort of we're in dire straits, kind of sort of accept it, but completely devoted to science and that kind of thing. And so yeah, I said to her the other day, look, I don't think science can carry on for more than about 10, 20 years. So basically, it's an epochal time in science, because probably next year, the James Webb Telescope, that'll be the last look we get at the universe. The standard model of, on the very small, is in complete disarray. But everybody talks about, in 50 years we'll be doing this. No, we won't. The money for this shit is not going to be there. The Large Hadron Collider is probably the last word in high energy particle physics. And what they're talking about is the next generation is the 100-kilometer ring, and that'll be 30 billion. It's inconceivable that after COVID and stuff that Europe will have the money for this bullshit. So what we have on the table now is the last of science. Now it's one thing to be a doomer and say, we can't last 10 or 20 years. By 2050, we're in total collapse. And then somewhere on another track is, but the internet is still going to be there forever. The rest of my life, the science is still beginning. It's like, no, almost by definition, you can say it's not. There's going to be change. It's not going to be like the last 30 years or so. The next 30 years is not going to resemble the previous 3 decades in any way, shape, or form. I mean, that's a very, very safe bet. So you can hedge against it by finding those attachments that you never realized. Just everything you touch, thinking like, treat it like it's about to go away, like you're on death row. And, you pick something up and think, say goodbye to it mentally. And then you're in bonus time. Every day that you see it, just like, you still here? I still have my phone. It's like, you wonderful phone. But that's a completely different relationship to other people that are going like, fuck, where's my phone? I can't find my like it's an attachment on their arm, and they just think they must have it, or it's part of their life. And you're like, no, that's completely the wrong attitude to have to all the stuff. And we would be better off. We'd be way better off if people were detached. So these attachments, the attachment to civilization, if we could let it go, we might have a hope. But we can't. We're like drowning people with gold in their pockets. We know we can't swim with the gold in our pockets, but we just can't take that gold out of our pockets. We're going to go down with it. That's a very interesting analogy. There was a ship that really went down in the Caribbean. It was full of 49ers coming back from San Francisco, and they all had gold. They were going back to the East Coast, and they all had lots of gold. And a lot of them went down literally with the gold in their pockets. They drowned with the gold because they had to, the ship sank. There was before the age of lifeboats, and they went to the bottom because they thought, like, I'm not giving up this gold. I just, even if I can't swim. And so they went to the bottom. But we're in that situation now with all our goodies and stuff. So, yeah, it's, yeah. Can you imagine if one of those guys that had the gold in their pockets before they actually got into that situation where they were sinking, they mentally thought like, what would it be like if I lost all my fortune that I was so lucky to make? And say like, yeah, if they got to the point where they said like, it's just part of the adventure, easy come, easy go and stuff. And that would be so different when they got into trouble on the shipwreck. But can you imagine the suffering that they had to go through because they were attached to it and they didn't even know that they were attached to it, you know? So that's the source of suffering, is attachment, according to the Buddha. And the four principles. Anyway.
I find that I think probably I must be the oldest of this group, and I find that I grew up in a time with no internet, no telephone, no television, and lots of things were not existing. And I got sucked into this, of course, through the last 20, 30 years. But at the same time, I can still recall a time without all these things. And it's a great anchoring thing to know that there was a life. There was already a life that was going ridiculous too when I saw the consumerism was starting even in the 60s. But I think that when you've had a very sheltered, you can try to, it's interesting to talk with young people sometimes about how you were living too, and you know that it was, and sometimes it makes me dizzy suddenly to realize the time I might be spending on internet and phone compared to what the hell was I doing when I was 15, you know, with all this time. And you know, it's really interesting. And I do that exercise of going back to the rhythm of days that I had when I was a teenager and living like when I was a teenager, which I've done for the last couple of weeks. But, you know, without this, and it might help. I don't know if you, Gary, or Hugh, what age you were when you started to get sucked into the technical world and all that. But I think it's, because you, Mike, you started, you know, boom, it was there. Like,
yeah, almost when you were young. Millennials, maybe like 10. Gen Z, when they were born. Yeah, they're very young. Yeah.
Well, see, the other thing is, I was just thinking as Sophie was talking, is the acceleration of differences between the generation. Like, you know, if I think of my parents and grandparents, the difference in between their lives and mine is a lot smaller than the difference between my life, for instance, and somebody younger. You know, I mean, my parents, for instance, they had, you know, a radio, cars, that kind of thing. Then you go back to my grandparents. Well, they didn't have cars until later in their life. They were probably around when radio was just becoming common for people, so they had some experience of that. But now it's sort of become this mushrooming degree of change, and you know, it's unimaginable to be without the kind of stuff that we've got now. It's really hard to have that mental exercise, removing it from your life and rethinking it.
Yeah, all these things are kind of like unwelcome lodges in our house. So you see, one of the reasons why this exercise is valuable, just questioning your attachment and maybe detaching and letting go, or just at least finding the source of it, and then that normally does it. One of the reasons for doing that is when the lodger moves in and just makes itself at home and kind of takes over, it passes the point of cost benefit. So if you think of something like internet banking, or the relationship we have with Google and stuff like that, is like it just kind of moves in. Next thing you know, Google owns your ass, and then you're working for Google in effect. They send you a thing saying, "Oh, you must update this, and you must do two-factor authentication, and you must blast on this, and we're changing the terms." And eventually you think like, hang on, this is all screwed up. I don't work for Google. Google's supposed to work for me. But you see that kind of thing where the lodger takes over the house, and before you know it, you're cleaning up for them, and you do it, and eventually you become their servant. And so all these things have taken over. They're supposed to be our servants. They become our masters. And so why
This
it's
is like,
painful is you have to go through them and say, you think Fred and Fred think of as your cell phone or Alexa or the internet or your computer or something. You think like, well, this fucking ridiculous electronic device, this Fred, is basically, it used to be your friend, and you still think of it your friend, and you say like, but when I think about it, this relationship sucks. If Fred came in and now, and basically, if they delivered the internet service and everything we have today, this service to people 2 decades ago, they would have thrown up their arms and said, fuck that, I'm not doing that shit. But basically, we've got comfortable with it. We allowed the lodgers in, and then basically they take over. So they've done that one after another. And so we don't question the cost benefit. We don't actually stop and look at them and go like, hang on, cost benefit's not here. I wouldn't have gone in for this deal if I'd known it was going to be like that. So, and then...
well, we seem to be constantly subjected to this wedging effect, where it starts off and you don't notice it, but is this sort of inevitable increase,
it's
incremental
this
increase?
Yeah, it's just creep. These things
Creep,
creep and take over our lives. Yeah. But you see, like, I'm in Greece here. And I see where the creep, you see, if now the creep turns into collapse, basically those are going to be very nasty masters to have. All those things now that basically have become, kind of sneaked in as servants and now taken over our household and become our masters. When the plantation starts to burn down and things go wrong, they're going to be very harsh taskmasters. They're going to be very evil. You're going to wish that you never let them through your front door. Now, and there's that, and there's the fact that people, as collapse happens, you get into this narrative where everything's awful. You're like doom scrolling, and more shit going on, and you get into saying, oh, the world is going to shit, and you say like, no, it isn't. You should be saying like, this is fucking wonderful. We're going back in time. We're going back to the good times. Nobody thinks that way.
Here.
Go into the narrative of this is bad. And it's like, that's not bad. You see, here I am in Greece. You talk to the old people. I've asked them, some of the old biddies in black dresses and stuff, the old widows. And I asked them, and I said like, if this all goes totally to shit and stuff, the tourists never come back, and everyone, oil gets cut off, and they say like, it doesn't matter. They said basically we just go into 1970. On some of these islands, they said we only had electricity since 1970. We had oil lamps. We had no tourists back then. We used to fish. We were happy as Larry. So to them, it's like it's very easy come, easy go. They don't. A lot of them don't have a cell phone and wouldn't want one and stuff. And then if they say like, well, it's neutral. Yeah, all the tourists are here, so then the place is wrecked, but we get the money. If the tourists fucked off, well, then basically everything would recover and we'd go back to our own lives. Now look at us. We've gone. Everybody's like, we're not going back to the Stone Age. It's like, well, that's a bit extreme. Nobody said the Stone Age. And they forget we've only had electricity for 100 years. So we've lost touch of all those things. It was basically going back to the 19th century or the 18th century. So like, I don't think those guys were having the worst time in the world. They were having a better time than us. But we don't see it because these lodges have taken over our house and our household. And so then basically the thought of this change that's coming is awful. But you should celebrate. It's not doom scrolling. It's glee scrolling. It's like every headline that says, people say about me and the stuff I post on X. Sorry, I was so miserable and it's like so negative. No, I'm celebrating every one of these things that looks like it's hitting the wall. Is like the only thing is the things where the ecosystem and and species and stuff under stress and stuff. That's really terrible. But when you say, basically the financial system's going to collapse, that's glorious. Well, it's absolutely what we need. We should be actually, so where you should get to eventually after all this, if you get to a stage where you can really be detached and you can give up all these attachments, well, then you're really useful to the planet, because it needs us to start thinking in those terms of basically winding down, rewilding, and just deconstructing all this monster that we've created. But we're so damn in love with this monster, and it owns us, and so it's getting back our autonomy and turning back the clock, which should be something you celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
So incredible turnaround. But you see how difficult it is. You see how screwed we are. You know, these things we cannot carry. There isn't a scenario I can see. I mean, maybe you should discuss it. But there isn't a scenario I can see where, you know, we carry on with cell phones and the internet saves us, and it's like, it's not. It's just it's ludicrous. I can't see how we can go on with the Arctic collapsing, with, you know, food shortages, financial collapse, wars and stuff, and everybody's, you know, the internet saves us. Cell phones are a good thing. It's like, no, the cell phones are rapidly becoming your ankle bracelet. So the last good thing they can be used for is now, like what we're doing now. I think this is a very good use of the internet. But if you're using the internet as an analgesic, if you're using it for escapism, that's a very bad use of it's. You know, basically the reason is because there's a cost. So you basically, it's like, you know, basically just sitting in the sun boozing when, you know, there's a tsunami coming. And so these are kind of our addictions, and you know, you got to make hay while the sun shines. So, well, that's the way I see it. And so we should, you know, start thinking in terms of getting off these things as drugs and escapism, and more into using them as a tool for adapting to where we're going, and telling people, you know, don't be stupid. We're heading for deep shit. This is not something where, you know, all these harebrained economists tell us, no, we're all going to be 3 times as rich or something. Oh my God. You can't extrapolate the line forward and say, look, we're all getting richer and richer. It's like just completely facile and shallow analysis. It's kind of, you know, like Steven Pinker saying, like, extrapolate the graph and we're all trillionaires. It's like, no, we're not. It's the same with China. It's like China's got tremendous troubles. It's far more likely to collapse than all the things. By 2030, China's going to exceed America's economy. Is like, right. What planet? So yeah. So
Hugh, can I go back a little bit?
Yeah.
Can I just go back a little bit? Because there's a kind of things that you're doing which are parallels. So you were talking about this kind of, you know, how this is building itself into our lives and taking over. And I see that as a parallel to what you were talking about last week with the grey eminence, that the butler inside your head is set up and taking you over. And so that's this kind of internal aspect of it. And the external aspect of it is the increasing addiction to the technological world. So we've got this on the outside and the inside going on, similar parallel processes occurring. And I would just want to relate this back to this process of detaching from, you know, the process that we were talking, Mark and you were just talking about at the beginning, was that it's a little bit like the habit that the internet might create if you're becoming dependent upon it. It is that it's worked its way into your system, and you're going to have a kind of withdrawal reaction to it. It's going to have its roots in deeper than you thought, you know, and you'll get to find that out if you stop, if you kind of go cold turkey, as they term it. And going back, what I was thinking about, because last week you were saying, you know, people are attached to their children and their spouses and all this kind of thing, and but that gets sort of embedded in your body as well. And you know, you could I'm just sort of looking at a situation where you are fairly genuinely not attached mentally or psychologically, but your body is a lot slower and things are embedded more deeply in it. And so you'll still have responses and feelings come up related to your former habit. Again, I see a parallel to the civilization thing too, where you know, where people are going to be, a lot of people are just going to be forced. The technology is not going to be available to them anymore. But they're going to have this kind of physical reaction as well as a psychological reaction, because it becomes embedded in your whole system. What I was thinking of was like you mentioned a minute ago, the analogy of a cat was, you know, if you're not the cat will just go and find somewhere else. But actually, if you look at animals, if you take your dog for a walk every morning, and then one day you decide that, well, I'm going to take the dog in the afternoon now, but the dog's going to be in a mess for you know, a couple of days or a few days, even though it's not suffering from like ego attachment, an identity crisis or anything, because you've changed its habit. It's going to go through a physical response, some kind of dog analogy of an emotional response, because it's kind of an innate thing. And what I'm trying to do, I guess the point I'm trying to make with all this is you know, for instance, you suggested the exercise last week of going through this, of examining the point at which you're tied up with something, and try and take a bit more of a not so ego involved relationship with it. But as I said, you're going to get sabotaged from behind by your physical feeling that's going to come up.
Yeah. So here's the thing, that it's kind of, so there are all these attachments. The thing what the dog is doing is reorganization. So you have to you're reorganizing in advance. So if you get taken by surprise, by collapse, you will have to do what would be difficult in 20 years. You'll have to do it in weeks. So you see, if I'll give you an arbitrary situation that could happen in collapse, and if it got a bit Mad Maxy, then 10 guys break down the door and gang rape you for 3 days, take all your food, and leave you close to hospitalization, but there are no hospitals. There's like a prepper scenario like that. Now, that's the end of you. You probably will rather commit suicide than carry on after that. No, it's unnecessary. If you knew for 20 years, if I told you, if I took you as, Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Future, and I took you so you could see all of this happening to you and said, right, you've got 20 years to prepare, you'd be in pretty damn good shape by the time you'd done that. You'd know that the time is ticking off. By the time you got there, you sort of like, okay, let's do this thing. That's entirely different. To actually have it just like, I thought everything was going to be okay forever, and now this bullshit, wow, there is no God, and then people are going to be hit all at once with so much change that they'll have to do so quickly, it'll be impossible. Most people will give up. They just can't do that much change. They say, you're asking me to be another person in a week. I'm saying, like, well, it's, either you do it or you die. It's do or die. But it's not quite as stuck in the brambles as you say. When you reorganize yourself, even like a dog, what it's doing is it's grieving. So if you reorganize all your attachments and reorganize your all your conceptions, we all have a little map that we use to navigate our life. It's a little philosophy that we've built together, brick by brick, ever since we were, ever since we were toddlers, we've been building this philosophy of the world. You know, oh, the world is a good place. The world is a bad place. People are good fundamentally. People are bad fundamentally. All these conclusions we come to, and we build up all this world philosophy. And then when all that map doesn't work anymore, you know, like it could be a millennial or progressive map, and we just go on to the stars and things get better and the internet is a baseline, we'll never fall below that, and all this bullshit that you're telling yourself. And then suddenly you realize, oh, fuck. That's not at all true. This map is useless. It doesn't freaking work. What I've been working off my whole life doesn't work. You got to throw it away and reassemble everything from scratch. Say, I'm lost in a city that I don't know, and now I've got to discover it for the first time. It's a hugely overwhelming task. But that reorganization, you will cry. Part of tears are your body saying that you're under stress. You're in grief. You're in stress because of loss. It's a mammalian response saying, "Help me! I'm under stress." And so when you get so what I'm saying is, it's not quite like you say, like you bodily corrupted by this, and then you can't kind of extricate yourself or mellow out from it. It's more like you start with these kind of exercises. They go in subliminally and they go in unconsciously. You'll get to a point where you really go cold turkey. Think of it more like this. It's more like we're in a bar or a pub or something like that. It's getting really wild. This is a seriously wild party. It's getting, you know that this is going badly. That basically everybody's getting a bit too wild. You know the cops are going to come in. It's minutes before this gets really bad. There's going to be blood on the floor. Everybody's getting more and more nuts. Everybody's getting more and more into the party. And at some stage you have an epiphany and you go, hang on, this is not going to end well. I'm going to back out while they're going still good. And you start slowly moving towards the exit. Now,
okay, can I?
We've seen like this is a bad situation. I'm gonna, and everybody else says, "Oh, we're sudden." Well, all of a sudden they don't even notice you going. But there's that one epiphany where you go, "Oh, this is gonna hurt. I'm gonna back out now," and then you detach from it. So you don't really you have to go through an inventory of each one of these attachments, but you see, it's not like, oh well, you have to say, well, I'm in the club, I was really getting on with this person, and I thought I might chat them up, and well, I have to give up doing that, and then I'll have to give up the booze. I had another drink on order, and I wanted to see somebody on the other side of the bar. I'll have to give up that. And so it doesn't work like that. It works like you start that way, and that allows you to see the whole situation. You don't have to get much alienation or detachment from the situation to go, oh, hang on, this is not good. And then you don't have to say, okay, well, this is not good. Now I have to quickly detach from this person, that person. I have to put the drugs away. I have to, put the booze away. I have to stop dancing. I have to find the exit. It's like it all happens just in one. So it goes in drop, and you suddenly go, oh, hang on. And that hang on moment makes it very easy to just go, oh, give up everything, and then you start giving up things fast. So it's more like coming to that conclusion that this is not going to end well, and so you instantly distance from it, and so then you really do go cold turkey quickly. A lot of grief and reorganization, but the benefit of doing that is huge. I mean, in the short term, you're a wreck, but it's better to be a wreck, before everyone else is going at it, right?
Is that what Gary meant by the physical, the body response? Because that's bringing up, and you were saying you're feeling a wreck, and could that be a sign of these kind of exercises of detachment when they happen, or is it I don't know, has anybody got any experience to share about this? Because I find it difficult to understand the physical part of that.
Oh hell, Yeah, what I was going to say was, sorry, Sophie, I'll get back to that
No problem.
point. Is even people who are following the state of the planet and humanity at the moment, who really understand where it's heading, that they're already gained a spiritual advantage just simply by their understanding. So I think that's embodied in what you're saying, isn't it, Hugh? That just the knowledge.
Yes, okay, but now this is a very, very important point. Okay, think of it like this. Well, so they're about 48% now, I think, in polls. It's like half the people know that we're in deep shit now. That's now what's important is what in deep shit means. If you're a rich person and then you're saying like, well, I'm gonna, head for my bunker, I'm gonna sort out transcontinental jet so I can get to New Zealand when the shit hits the fan and stuff like that. You're not really detaching, right? You're really hanging on to your lifestyle. So you're saying I'm a rich guy, and your rich ego is going to try and preserve itself in New Zealand. So knowing that we're all screwed is not enough. You have to go much deeper and then start this long journey to say, what does not being screwed mean? You've got to say, how did we get here? And it's very important not to get onto a narrative of ego survival. You want to crush your ego. The ego got us here. But you don't want to then start what people normally do. If people are on that track, and most people are, but certainly on Reddit and stuff, you'll see me doing this. People will come and they'll say, how long have we got? And they start asking questions. What they're asking is, how do I survive this? You're saying, like, you must always block them, because basically you don't want them to survive. What the them that they want to survive is their current ego. And then that's the thing. If you have half a chance, that ego has to die. So you want to tell people you don't have a chance. There's nothing you can do. You're fucked. And then when they so thoroughly they get to the moment, they will get to the doomer moment where they go like, oh shit. And say like, and then it's more like what you said. What that posted. That little piece, that awesome little piece, Gary, that you posted about basically surrender. He said defeat, but I mean, it's really surrender. You have to surrender your ego and say, okay, I give up. I'm fucked. So like, checkmate. He said, that's the first ray of hope you're going to have. But you see, they're not doing it. They're trying to avoid that moment of realization. And so that's a very, very bad trip to get onto. I see, I know a lot of people that are like doomers, and their way of handling it is they don't even begin to want to get rid of their ego. See, all these things are ego attachments, all these things we attach to. We don't really like our phone and that. We really like it according to our ego. So it's encapsulated in our ego boundary, and our ego has incorporated it. So we have to detach it from our ego again. And when you've detached everything from your ego, there's nothing left. So, but what most of these people that I know is they don't even want to begin detaching stuff from their ego. So they, even though they're doomers, they will say, well, I'm going to be a hedonist. Basically, my philosophy is just champagne and lobsters as long as you can. I'm saying, like, this is not a good strategy. This is basically, I say, like, first of all, I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of people that think that way. So it's not going to work out very well, because basically you're not going to be a mutualist. You're going to be an individualist, and you're going to basically say, well, I'm going to look after me as long as I can. It's like, well, there's a really shit show right there. That's very bad theater, very bad philosophy, and basically it's a train wreck waiting to happen. Because if you're being selfish like that, well, there's 7.8 billion people that have exactly the same idea. So basically, you don't want to get into this bun fight and it's not survival of the fittest. The reason why I'm making these Darwin videos now is because I'm trying to explain to people survival of the fittest was the stupidest idea our sick capitalist culture ever came up with. It is not the way nature works. And basically, if you think it's survival of the fittest, and people do, I know anarchists that say, oh, who's going to survive collapse? It'll be the fittest. No, it won't. It'll be the mutualists. It'll be the people that have some integrated network left. People say, well, cockroaches will survive. Bullshit. Cockroaches surviving came out of the 1950s. Basically, the cockroaches survive and the champion survive came out of the atomic bomb tests on Bikini Island in the 50s. There was some stupid twat who went back to the island, and then basically they said, the cockroaches are still alive. Well, cockroaches likely came from the ships that came back to the island. So the cockroaches didn't really survive the nuclear blast. It's a complete myth. But then that, the cockroaches survive myth comes in, and then basically people think this is something you can survive, and something will live on. Well, I'll tell you it won't, because cockroaches don't live in isolation, especially on an island like Bikini after a nuclear blast. They all integrated in a web. So everything has a habitat. It is basically integrated in a mutually supporting web. It's a Kantian whole where the whole supports the parts, and you are a part and support the whole, and it's nested. It goes down like a Russian doll. So you can't say, oh, well, I'll take this Russian doll right out of the middle of the stack and say, this is cockroach, it'll survive, and here's resilient me, I'll survive. It's bullshit. It's like, where's your network? Where's the closed loop that sustains you? So this idea that you can be an individualist and, you're going to be the atom that comes, no, you will die of lack of connection. Basically, you will die of loneliness and isolation. So it's a terribly, terribly bad philosophy to go into. And basically, what it means is you're going to get educated. At some point, you're going to get a rapid education. You're going to get a crash course in reality. And that's really what I'm trying to save people from here. It's obvious. I'm sure, hopefully, what I've just said is obvious once I've said it. And then what I'm trying to save you from is this crash course of figuring this out all on 1 hour packed into one day, kind of close to the end. So it's like, do it up front. Yeah, live it up front right now and just get over all the bullshit. Then you might have like a wonderful time. It might be, wonderful exit, and you'll die right. The rightness is all.
But it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process. Once you start it, it starts a movement that never stops. Once you start these exercises, detachment and it's just a way of living. It never stops. Well, for me,
I'm sorry to break this. You're all doomed. I mean, I've all got you out on the wing already, so you can't. Well, you've already heard enough so that you can't go back.
No.
So you're stuck. You're way out on the plank already. You can't really go back to your innocence, right?
Santa Claus doesn't exist.
Yeah. You've already seen too much, so you can run, but
Here you reminded me also of that Eric Fromm video that was posted. You put that up, I think, didn't you? Where he was saying the sick people are healthy and the healthy people are sick. But you just said a moment ago that, in this apocalyptic world, these people who think they're going to die are going to die of isolation because they've got no, you can't live like that. But I was just thinking now, even in this world, for people who understand the difference between what's what and what's not, you die of psychological, emotional isolation in the world the way it is, because nobody else wants to go there.
So this is the scenario. Let me try to paint this picture for you as graphically and viscerally as I can. In South Africa, the guys that went on this path of individualism, then when things get tough, they reinforce that lager mentality. It gets worse and worse. So particularly on these, staunch Calvinist, Puritan Afrikaners on farms, right? They get more and more entrenched. They can feel, they start from a position of power. Their whole world is disappearing. They're like the far right now, these shooters like the Christchurch shooter. In his manifesto, he says, ethnic replacement. So these guys feel like the ethnic replacement's happening. The walls are coming in, disorder is starting to seep into their lives. The light of colonialism, the light of intellectual, advances is just going out slowly, and so they double down and they double down. But where it all ends is a horrible night in their front living room where they get out the shotgun, they shoot each one of their kids, then their wife, then they shoot themselves. You don't want to head to that room. Now imagine it's entirely unnecessary. What the guys could have done is they could have given up. You see, the thing was, they were exactly like the guys with the gold in their pockets. They could have said, look, we all know where this is heading. Nobody really had any doubt. They're just in denial about it. But if they got over their denial and they said, look, this country is going to basically have a black government soon. We're going to lose white supremacy. And then think ahead. So what do? The obvious thing to do was what many other people did. They started to get, friends with black people. They started to integrate in the communities. They started to understand each other, put out networks and join organizations that were fostering change. Now, those people had a fucking ball. They never died off. When the elections came, it was a time for celebration. It was, the Rainbow Nation and truth and reconciliation, and they went on this other path. Now, all the individualists are heading for that little bunker, and we're seeing this Brexit attitude, the rise of the sovereign individual. So if you're on, most liberals have been educated to be individualists.
Yeah.
Where that gets to is, if you're capable, you can be like Rees-Mogg's sovereign individual and be a citizen of the world, and you can try and surf as long as you can with your money, preserving your ego in New Zealand. But at some stage in New Zealand, you'll wind up like those farmers in South Africa, where basically you have to take the forever pills, and it's a horrible place to get to. It's utterly unnecessary. You could go to the whole shit. Basically, if you were Jeff Bezos, you could have a Scrooge type epiphany, or any liberal in a liberal democracy that's an individualist say, I'm going to give up my individualism. I'm not going to say, look, I'm going to put up walls around Brexit. I'm going to make sure that while everybody else is going to shit, I'm going to look after number one. And, that you can give up on that and say, I'm going to be poorer. I'm going to be different. I'm going to change. I'm going to basically say, I'm going to start, making friends with all these smelly people, because basically I'm going to be one of them soon. You see the difference? You could find friends. You have this growing thing where you have, on the one hand, you have this growth, reinforcement of all these networks and associations. And even as the world goes to shit, it doesn't matter, because you're growing psychologically. And the other one, you're getting smaller and smaller. The world is shrinking like this. So at the moment,
but how
atomized individuals, the world is shrinking like this. And then the news, the mainstream news, and everybody's doom scrolling is saying, look at the world's shrinking, like this. And the other people are like, fuck that world. The sooner that snuffs out, the better. And then they building this other world that'll never get into the Guardian's not going to report on saying, hey, the banking system goes and people are liberated from it. You're never going to see that headline. But there are people, in the sailing community, all these people backing out towards the door. So you got to find them. You got to start looking around saying, who's realized that we're in deep shit? And start looking for them. There are two communities in the sailing community. There are these guys that are getting yachts, and they're talking about more and more electronics. And they're like, yeah, you know, we want to be really comfortable and survive the collapse and make sure we self-sufficient with solar. And then these are these other guys that are going like, we want to be able to make stuff ourselves. So they're going more towards wood. They're trying to get rid of electronics. They're trying to learn celestial navigation. They're trying to go back to the old world of sail. Because they know that basically as time goes on, you're not going to be able to go to the chandlery or go and, you know, your electronics all blows and stuff. And you're like, oh, I'm going to get my warranty. It's like, good luck with that. That firm has gone bust. You know, that's economic collapse, dude. So, you know, there's two trajectories. Like, I'm just saying, get onto the right one.
Yeah. Yes, but I'm just wondering about. I'm not disputing what you're saying, of course, but you know, how deeply ingrained is this in people that they just don't wake up to the possibility of taking a different path? And again, I see a parallel with people who discover a spiritual path in life. Is that if you just wander around in mainstream society, you'd never bump into it. You'd never get a bloody clue that there's any other perspective, any other take on existence. You know, you can't, in a certain way, you can't blame people for being completely lost in this paradigm of the way things already are, and not being able to conceive of anything different. But actually, Hugh, do you want to? Sophie, do you go on? Yeah,
it's very much you know, this is where it gets dark. But the vast majority of people are fucked, right? Irredeemably fucked. You don't really have to share their fate. Now, you don't escape. You join their fate if you become an individualist and you head to that dark room on the farm at night. If you put out feelers and become a mutualist, right, you're still in a very small camp. But there, within the society, there are people that are basically living in it, but they're not of it. So you can't drop out and do a parallel polis. That's a big mistake. You've got to go where you are now is where you are. It's an ego move to say, we're going to break away. We're going to serve a regenerative culture, all this bullshit like an XR. It's saying like, no, you cannot leave your station. You have to stand in your boots where you are on the burning deck, and then you go from there. But you will, if you start on this, then you will find that what I call is like the intrasubjectivity synchronicity telephone, is there are a lot of people that are thinking the same way, and you will gravitate towards them. You will find them, and then basically these networks establish just like magic. You don't force it. Don't go like, I'm going to look for the web, because you see, you're escaping the ego. So if you go and look for it, you'll find ego. Your ego is looking, you'll find ego. It's reciprocity, right? If you go say, I know where this culture is going, I'm going to do a breakaway society, and you go and find the website to do all these wonderful people doing this. No, that's doomed, because they're doing an ego thing. They put the website out. The only reason why you put a fucking website out, unless you're really enlightened and you're doing some weird shit like I am with an ARG, the only reason why you put a little breakaway society thing is because they're like, I've got a different ego. I'm, you know, McPherson, or even GDR and these guys. They say like, we're making a new cult, and you say, no, cults isn't the thing we need to get away from. So if you go out and say, I want to escape, and you say, well, you can easily find some bastards that have the same idea. Those are not the guys you want to be with. You want to stay in your boots. And basically, in your situation, you start developing yourself, and then trust that the way the universe works is you'll find people on that frequency. So while going back to the analogy when you're in the bar, that you realize this party's getting really rough and it's going to end with the police very soon, and then basically or the place is on fire, and then you say like, well, if you look around the room, or you don't even have to, you will gradually see that there are other people that have got it. And then basically you will cross this crowded room of nutcases who are drunk and angry and completely insane. You will make eye contact left and right with all these people that say like, you've got it too. Yeah, it's like, exit? Yeah. And it all happens just by magic. It doesn't happen with these forced moves. These forced moves are all ego. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, can I, because you mentioned forced moves there, kind of takes me back to the beginning. I don't know if you want to go there, but when you're talking about this exercise of detachment and that, for me, it brought up the question of who's doing this. It's as though I'm dividing myself against myself, and I'm going out on a little mission to sort of detach my ego from whatever and I've noticed that one way or another, every spiritual suggestion comes back to this same sticking point, where there's got to be a doer who ends up being highly likely to be just an aspect of your ego that